Hello, everyone. Kevin Eickhoff here from Kevin Eickhoff Ministries. Today, I would like to talk to you about an experience I had in which I met Swami Kripalvananda, which Kripalu Yoga is basically named after him. And I'm going to tell you the story how I met him, his greatest devotee or disciple, and how I met her, and how it kind of changed my life in many ways in regards to practicing more of a bhakti, devotional form of yoga or spiritual practice. And so first, let me just mention that this particular murti or statue right here is a statue of Lakdalish. And you can see that it's basically Shiva emerging right out of the lingam stone itself, out of the Shiva lingam stone. And the Shiva lingam stones occur naturally. If you remember, I've spoken before about Shiva lingam stones. Here's an actual Shiva lingam stone. They occur naturally like this out of the Nirmada River in India. And so this is Shiva emerging. And this is considered the 28th incarnation of Shiva, or Lakdalish. Lakdalish tapped Swami Kripalvananda on the head many years ago in India, and Swami Kripalvananda ended up doing a practice following that. It basically put him into a yogic position, and following that position, other positions and postures emerged from that until he eventually unfolded into the divine. And briefly, Swami Kripalvananda had a building here in Lansdale, Pennsylvania, in which he practiced for 4¼ years when he came to the United States. And that building is still there, and there's still meditations and kirtans and yogic practices that go on out of that building all the time. And that's up in Lansdale. And there'll be a link to the bottom of that when this video is done, so you can see that. There'll also be a link to Swami Kripalvananda's teachings, his actual writings. It's very hard to find actual writings from a particular saint or master teacher like this. And so there'll be a link to that. And those teachings can be found for free if you explore it and see. They are yogic teachings. They're deep yogic practices. I can't really say any of this is connected to a religion per se. However, they're all raised out of the Hinduistic practices. So, of course, that's what you're going to see here. But I was never a Hindu. I never practiced that way. However, I still learned how to do a lot of my practice through this. And so I'm teaching you about some of my experience of how I got connected to this particular lineage. And so I was already a meditation practitioner, mainly through transcendental meditation. I didn't really do a lot of hatha yoga, and most of my practice was all spent in meditation time. And my body was really deteriorating and feeling it. And I knew I needed to do something. And so I discovered there was this man by the name of Amrit Desai who started yoga here in Philadelphia with 50 students to begin with, way back when. And then it unfolded and built into the Kripalu Yoga Institute that it is today. And then there were problems, and Amrit disassociated himself with that, and him and his wife moved to Florida. And so somehow during that time, I discovered him. And when I went down to Florida to become a yoga teacher, and I did all the things, I probably have over 750 hours of yoga teaching from Amrit Desai. But the person that I really met when I went down there is Urmila Desai, who they all called Mataji, who was Amrit Desai's wife. And she was deathly ill. She was on her deathbed when I went down there to learn and instruct in yoga. And I felt something toward her. And I gave up all my lunches. And I went in and I did Reiki therapy on her. and massage, and I basically worked on her every day. I'd given up all my lunches for the 10 days that we were there. And so during that period of time, and during one of the sessions, as I was working on her, I see this small dot in my consciousness. And I became more and more aware of this dot. And the dot kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually I realized the dot wasn't a dot at all, but it was actually Swami Kripalvananda coming in from somewhere in the universe to me. And as he came in to me and I saw him, and he kept expanding. He kept expanding to the size of the universe, all in my conscious field. He spoke to me and he told me that Urmila Desai was his most dearest and closest disciple ever. She took care of him. She fed him. She brought him his daily meals when he lived here at the Mukti Dham, which is the House of Liberation up in Lansdale, PA. And she cared for him. She lived at the bottom of the hill with her husband, Amrit, and she would bring him daily meals. And she cared for him in whatever he needed. And so she held the most deepest teachings of Kripalu because he passed them to her as the closest disciple. And he told me so as I was working on her. He also told me she was going to pass, which she did by the next time I came down there to do more teacher training sessions. She had already passed away. But what happened is I had a profound experience with Mataji, Urmila Desai, in which she really became more of my guru teacher. She passed on teachings to me between me and Bapaji. Bapaji is the other name for Swami Kripalvananda. It just means father. And Mataji just means mother. And so this is the mother and father of the lineage of Kripalu. And there is still a direct connection, a spiritual connection to the place of worship or place of meditation up in Lansdale, Pennsylvania, which is the Mukti Dham. And you can go visit that or look that up. But this is how I basically connected to her. And I worked on her for about, well, that week, that 10-day period. And toward the end of those 10 days, the course ended on Mother's Day. And during this time, she had been comatose whenever I went in to work on her. She never spoke, she didn't look or anything like that. But on the last day I was there, she actually got up and she was out walking on the grounds on Mother's Day itself. And I ran up to her and I dropped at her feet and I touched her feet. I couldn't believe she was actually out of bed and walking around. And that was actually the last I ever really saw her. I touched her feet, and then the rest of the time, our connection has been internal, inside. She is giving me internal teachings between her and Bapaji throughout the years. And I eventually became the caretaker of the Mukti Dham, that building I'm talking about in Lansdale, Pennsylvania. And I was a caretaker of that building for about 6 to 7 years and did many things that Bapaji and Mataji instructed me to do to bring more spiritual awareness, more spiritual consciousness, and more spiritual energy to that particular building. And it sits there in sort of a potential energy type situation, so that, or seed energy, so that when certain people go in there and do particular prayers, those seeds will open and you will find unfoldment into the consciousness that's already been set up by Bapaji himself. And so anyway, for those who wonder, this can be a direct spiritual connection to Kripalu himself. And it's basically through his greatest disciple there ever was, Urmila Desai. And you could look her up as well and see all about her. But I'll leave some links on the bottom. You can find out the links and explore more about these individuals. But with that, I wish you a wonderful day. Namaste. Jai Bhagwan. May you see the light within yourself and within all others. Have a blessed and wonderful day.